Welcome, everybody. I am Brett Walter, the founder and CEO of Climate Action Now. Can you all hear me? A thumbs up, anybody? Okay, thank you, Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. While we're getting settled, I'd like to invite you to give us a shout out in the chat with your name, location, and affiliations. And I also like to invite you to turn on your cameras and share your bright faces with us. We do these parties as a Zoom meeting rather than as a webinar to facilitate interaction and underscore that we're all in this together. And special thanks to our friend Renee Carver, who is working hard behind the scenes to ensure that we keep our special dispensation with Zoom to have 1,000-person Zoom meetings. I know Renee's working on that. He got it for us for the last year. So thank you, Renee. If you are out there, really appreciate it. So I hope everybody is safe and well this evening. The recent weather events underscore the urgency of citizen advocacy, like the kind we are taking tonight. According to new research published this spring, a 2-day citywide blackout in Phoenix during heat wave like the one we're having right now could lead to half the population of Phoenix, some 790,000 people, requiring emergency medical attention in a city with just 3,000 available beds. I'm posting a link in the chat to all of you from this really cool organization called Heat Map, which has an article with tips for surviving a blackout in a heat wave. So that's in the chat there for you. I printed it out and I have it in a file at hand if I need it. So if you've experienced any impacts or made any major life changes as a result of climate change, please share them with everybody in the chat. We're here tonight to learn about and advocate for action on food waste, with particular attention to the food waste and composting provisions in the 2023 U.S. Farm Bill. As we discussed in our action party last week, the U.S. Farm Bill is a really big deal, and it can put a huge dent in our food waste problem if we get it right. So we have worked with our expert panel to create messages for you to send with the Climate Action Now app tonight to our political leaders to help them get it right. I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it again. Public opinion is the only effective counterweight to the immense power of the fossil fuel industry. The industry knows this, which is why it spends so much time and money trying to shape our opinions with disinformation. So your opinion and the messages that you send tonight really do matter. Your opinion is your superpower, and the app is your megaphone. But your opinion doesn't count for much if you don't express it. So please join us tonight in sending messages. To help us get started with that, I'd like to hand the spotlight over to Matthew Volrath, our Director of Content, to give you a bit of help. Matthew?
Hey, everybody. So I'm just going to share my screen here and show you all how to get started taking action tonight. So the way that we're going to be taking action, as I'm sure many of you know, is on the Climate Action Now app on your phone. If you have it, you know the drill. If not, it's really easy to get on and start taking these actions. All you have to do is scan this little QR code up on the right here. You're just going to take out your phone, point it right at the screen here, boot up your camera, whatever you use to take pictures, and point it right at that box like you're going to take a picture. But instead of taking a picture, wait for this little yellow thing to come up that says Climate Action Now, and press right on that, and it'll take you to either the App Store or to the app itself if you already have it. If you have the app, you're still going to want to scan this. If you don't have the app, you're definitely going to want to scan this. There are other ways. I know QR codes can be tricky for some folks, so there are other ways to get on the app. Let me know in the chat if you're having any trouble with the QR code. I'll try to provide you with some alternate methods. Hopefully, most of you will be able to scan the QR code and get started taking the actions, which are already ticking up. I'd love to see it. We're already at 286 actions out of our initial goal of 500. We're going to beat that goal in short order here, I'm sure. We're going to raise it a number of times tonight. That's how we roll. Just keep at it. We've got, I think, 230 something actions for you guys to take tonight. So nobody should be bored, especially with our wonderful panel that we're going to have giving us great information about the actions we're taking as we're taking them.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. That was a good introduction. And as he said, just dive right in and start taking action, and then also listen to our panelists who do both at the same time. By the way, we always get asked this question at the beginning of every action party. Yes, it is being recorded, and I will send a link to all of you later tonight or early tomorrow with a link to the recording. And the recording, of course, will have the QR code in it. And by the way, these actions that you're taking tonight are now in the app permanently, at least until the Farm Bill passes. And there is no law that says you can't send the same message to your legislators twice or thrice or more often. Not on the same day. The app won't let you do it on the same day, but the next day the app will let you send it again. And guess what? They aren't reading your immortal prose. What they have are, our staffers who are keeping a tally of how many emails they have received from the constituents on issues. So it really is a numbers game. The more messages you send, the greater the impact we can all have. Finally, before I hand things over to our moderator and panel, I'd like to thank our co-sponsors, the National Resources Defense Council, the Food Recovery Network, and the Climate Reality Project. Thanks to these amazing organizations for helping us with this event. Next, I'd like to thank Matthew Bullrath and our terrific team of volunteer action creators, several of whom are in the group today. And also, I want to let you know, all of you are welcome to join our team. And Matthew, why don't you put your email in the chat? So the way to find out about contributing actions to the app would be to email Matthew. It's very, very, very easy, folks. And guess what? You put in one action, that'll take you 15 minutes, and then it can be used hundreds or even thousands of times, will be taken by thousands.
And it will, yeah. They'll see, 200, 300 people taking your action within a couple of days.
So it's a great way for you to have to scale your impact, your personal impact. So we'd love to have you there. And then I also want to give special thanks to Dr. Marianne Krasny, who is the director of the Civic Ecology Lab at Cornell University and Climate Action Now's very own director of food policy. Marianne recruited our distinguished panel of experts tonight and created, with their help, most of the messages that you will be sending. So, Marianne, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Matthew. And Matthew, we already got one chat message from the Name is Google account about the QR code. And
okay.
If any of you have any technical issues throughout about you can't access the app or whatever, if you can just message Matthew directly, that's probably the fastest way to get help.
Yes, and if I'm not able to help you right now, you can just stay on after the meeting and I'll give you some one-on-one assistance. We'll get you figured out, don't worry.
And Matthew's very patient. So don't be embarrassed if you have a few technology problems. We can overcome them. All right. So it's my great pleasure tonight to introduce our two special guests. The first is Nina Sevilla, who's the program advocate for food waste and food systems with the National Resources Defense Council. Nina works to ensure that we have a sustainable, healthy, and equitable food system for all. She facilitates learnings across cities by sharing successes and lessons learned from NRDC's Food Matters project to a network of partners across the nation. She also works with those partners to run a consumer education campaign, Save the Food, which is great. You can search it and find the resources online. I actually did that about a couple of years ago. I didn't realize, though, that Nina was involved with it. To reduce household food waste. Previously, Nina worked to increase food access through child nutrition programs at the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona. And she holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from Bates College, and she's based in the NRDC office in San Francisco. Our second guest tonight is Regina Anderson, who is the executive director of the Food Recovery Network and responsible for setting the vision, strategic framework, and fundraising efforts for FRN. FRN strategic framework, which is called FRN 10X, seeks to recover surplus food to feed everyone who is hungry in the US. Regina works to use the FRN platform to meet the needs of the current moment and to put in place the systems and structures necessary to support an equitable recovery from the devastations of the pandemic and generations of food system inequality. Regina believes we must address the racial disparities that are present in our food system that disproportionately impact the health and economic outcomes for Black, Latinx, Latina, and Native American communities, and we must do the work together. And I just want to say that you'll probably learn, I'm sure you'll learn more about the Food Recovery Network, but if you are at a university like I am, you might have a student chapter, which we do at Cornell. And so there's opportunities often locally to join in this work. Regina received her Master's of Arts in Literary and Cultural Studies from Carnegie Mellon and her BA in English Literature from the University of Maine at Augusta. Regina sits on the board of directors for Food Tank and Regen All, and she is a member of the Philadelphia Artists Collaborative Pink Noise Projects. And if you don't know what Pink Noise Projects is, you can search it and you'll see all kinds of very interesting art, including maybe if they still have it up, one of Nina's exhibitions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nina.
And let me just jump in before Nina starts talking to say, hey, what, we met our goal of 500 already. I think we're getting good at this action party stuff, folks, because we just hit the ground running and it's still cranking up there. So Matthew, why don't you bump us up to 1,000 and then let us know when we hit that. So sorry to interrupt, Nina, over to you.
All good. Well, thank you for having me. I am honored to be here alongside Regina this evening or late afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. So really excited to be here, and I will share my screen. I'm going to be starting off with a little overview of the problem of food waste in this country and how that intersects with climate. Just want to make sure everyone can share or see my screen. Maybe could I get a thumbs up? Perfect. All right. So like I said, in my presentation portion for today, I'm going to provide a bit of an overview of the problem of food waste. Maybe you're here because you already care a lot about this issue, in which case, amazing, please bear with me. But if not, and you're interested in learning more, I'm just going to start with a general overview, and then going to outline some of the solutions and the frameworks that we at NRDC and across the food waste field use, like the EPA's hierarchy. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Zero Food Waste Coalition that NRDC is a part of and our policy priorities for this current Farm Bill. So moving into the problem, up to 40% of food in our country goes uneaten. And that is all food that is imported and grown and wasted, meaning ending up in landfills. And this is, to me, staggering. It's like leaving the grocery store with 5 bags of food and leaving 2 in the parking lot and driving away. And it adds up, and climate impacts, social impacts, and we're going to dive into all of that. But some preliminary numbers: we use incredible amounts of agricultural water, cropland, fertilizer. All of that goes into growing food that ends up being wasted. And when we waste food, we waste all of the resources that went into growing, processing, and transporting that food. In addition, you've maybe seen the landfill number there. This is a data from the EPA. The most recent numbers are 2018, but these don't change a lot. And this is municipal solid waste, MSW, landfill materials. And as you can see, food is the largest and single largest material in our landfills. And that means that all this food is breaking down and releasing methane and taking up space. So all of that adds up into climate emissions and, like I said, all those other resource uses. And because of all of this, Project Drawdown, a nonprofit that looks at the most impactful solutions to climate change, has ranked reducing food waste as one of the top solutions to addressing climate change. Around 4% of US greenhouse gas emissions come from wasted food. And that is from, the source of that is ReFed, which is another great nonprofit dedicated solely to food waste reduction. And I'll mention them a little bit later too, because they're one of our great partners. So just to underscore a little bit further, these are statistics and data from an EPA report from a couple years ago that was quantifying the environmental impacts of food waste in our country from farm to fork. So this doesn't even include the landfill portion. And they found, according to all the data sets they looked at, that food waste annually has the greenhouse gas emissions equivalent of more than 42 coal-fired power plants. So there's a lot here, and it can be daunting, but I think, as we'll talk about more, the bright side is that there's a lot of ways to address this problem. So a couple more background data points. Where does food waste happen? These numbers are from 2021, so there are some new numbers from ReFed, from EPA, and they'll all vary a little bit, but the general theme is the same, and that is that our homes or residential sector is the #1 generator of waste or excess food. This was a surprise to me when I first started learning more about the field. I kind of thought, oh, maybe farms or, grocery sector would create the most excess, but it is, when you add it all together, everything coming from our homes contributes the most wasted food. But then after that, there's food loss on farms, and then food service, restaurants and institutions are the next largest sector, and then manufacturing and retail. So I just share this to say, one of the things that I think is really powerful about, or that gives me hope on reducing food waste is that a lot of it is coming from our homes and where we have control over. Sometimes I think all these climate solutions, like, it can feel so daunting, but this is one place where individual action really does make a difference. And Regina is going to share a bit more about how in your local community you can also help make a difference. So moving on to add just another layer to this whole problem, I think, as many of us know, in our country, we have a food security crisis, and there are incredible rates of food insecurity, rural and urban. This map is from Feeding America, and it's 2020 numbers, but it shows the counties and food insecurity rates across the country. And you can see no one is free of this problem. We define food insecurity as the uncertainty around where your next meal is going to come from. So if someone has experienced that feeling anytime during the year, then these numbers are measured through surveys and things that the USDA does. And then that would mean that someone is experiencing food insecurity. And I add this to say that it compounds a problem when we're throwing away so much of the food in our country, and then so many of our neighbors sometimes don't know where their next meal is going to come from. And in that EPA study that I showed, we do grow and import enough food in this country. It somehow isn't making it to people. So that is one of the things that we need to address. So just kind of to sum it all up, why should we focus on food waste? Well, less wasted food equals more food for people, greenhouse gas reductions, fewer materials and going to the landfill. And then, of course, if we properly manage food scraps through composting, then we're recycling all those nutrients carbon, et cetera, back into the food system as well, and using that to grow new food. So I really think that this is such a powerful place to work because it is such an intersection between climate and health and environment. So I think that food waste reduction is super exciting. All right, moving a little bit into some of the solutions. One of the frameworks I mentioned was the EPA food recovery hierarchy, which is now on the slide. And this is a framework for how to best deal with excess or wasted food. So starting at the top is the most preferred solutions, and then going down to the least preferred. So at the top, we have source reduction, or sometimes it's called prevention. So of course, the best thing to do is to not have excess or wasted food to begin with. And this could be done through, each sector has different solutions that will work for it. Like for the grocery retail sector, maybe right-sizing your ordering, and for the farm, better pest management or different things that will reduce losses. So then moving down, if there is excess food, the next best thing to do is to make sure it gets to people, where food recovery or food rescue is some common terms you'll hear, and Regina is going to share a little bit more about that. And then if the food perhaps is not fit for human things, and then it's really truly food scraps and non-edible, then it's best to compost that, or as EPA highlights, to go to industrial uses like anaerobic digestion. The one asterisk I will add here that my team likes to say is that we'd prefer composting to go above industrial uses, because that is the best way to recycle nutrients and truly have a closed loop system. But anyways, so then of course, if there's anything, the last resort should be landfill disposal. And just to highlight that, focusing higher up on the hierarchy, so around prevention or food recovery, really brings the most environmental, climate, economic, and social benefits. So next, I wanted to highlight that we have a national goal in our country to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. And the USDA and EPA committed to this goal in 2015, and it aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The one that refers to food waste is called, is number 12.3. So I think this has provided kind of a framework to hold the federal government accountable, but also to kind of inspire or incentivize more action around food waste. So it's really great to have this national goal to point to, even though it is very ambitious. And then I wanted to move into a little bit about the Zero Food Waste Coalition and our work at NRDC. So to take a step back, we see the federal government as playing a critical role in food waste reduction, in funding and setting up better systems for how we grow food and food management and all of that. And we saw a need for more coordination across the NGO sector, but also with local governments and food businesses. So the NRDC, along with the World Wildlife Fund, ReFed, the organization I mentioned and cited their data earlier, and the Harvard Law School Food Law and Policy Clinic came together to launch this Zero Food Waste Coalition, as we call it. And now we have many other amazing members, including Food Recovery Network and other nonprofit organizations, food businesses, and local governments. And we have three kind of pillars of the work. The first is around advocating for policies that address the climate crisis, improve equity, and increase access to healthy food by reducing food waste and advancing food recovery efforts. And I will talk a bit more about our policy priorities on my next slide. But then second, our second pillar is around offering a central source of information and resources and toolkits that can enable individuals, communities, organizations, and governments to reduce food waste. And I'm going to highlight a couple too on my next slide. And
just jump in real quick and say we have done it again. We are at 1,200
yay.
actions. Fantastic job. You guys are awesome. You are pounding the pavement. I love to see it. Let's do another goal. Let's go to 1,800. See if we can make it to 1,800.
Amazing. That's so exciting. Great. So our third pillar then is around just increasing the visibility of this issue and how it links to climate change and environmental issues, and also uplifts the diversity of organizations and leaders in this space. So if you're interested in learning more, the website is zerofoodwastecoalition.org. I can also drop it in the chat after I stop sharing my screen, but it has all of the resources and things I'm about to outline. So a couple of our main resources that we've developed, the first image on your left-hand side of the screen is the Food Loss and Waste Action Plan, and that it outlines actions that the federal government should take to reduce food waste across 5 themes, like coordination and different things. So that is on our website, and we came together and published that in 2021, I believe. And then since that have developed a couple other resources also shown here that are more specific recommendations for specific policy vehicles. So the second is opportunities to reduce food waste in the 2023 Farm Bill. And like Brett said at the top, the Farm Bill is the biggest opportunity that we have to influence the food system in our country. The bill gets reauthorized every 5 years, and it funds the USDA and all food-related programs like crop insurance, subsidies, and SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition, I'm gonna forget the acronym, but also commonly known as food stamps, gets reauthorized through the Farm Bill too. And in the next slide, I think, which is one of my last, I'm going to highlight some of our top recommendations for the Farm Bill. But another policy lever and layer that we're working on is actually at the state level. So we've developed the resource on the farthest right, which is the most recently released piece, which is a state policy toolkit. And that covers about 20 or so state level policies that we think are really important in reducing food waste across the hierarchy, and it provides model language and examples of real life points to real life policies that exist. And the goal is to kind of make that easy for policy makers to look at and take the language, or even citizens to point to and suggest and say, hey, this exists, you know, in Boston, so why can't we do it here too? So yeah, just to reiterate, the goal is to make it easy to share best practices and adopt them. So lastly, moving into some of the top recommendations for the Farm Bill around food waste reduction. And this is all from that report, the Farm Bill report that I had shared an image of on the last slide. I've kind of organized them loosely along the hierarchy. So we have some around prevention, surplus food rescue, recovery, recycling or composting, and then better coordination. And the ones that are bolded are our top 4 recommendations for this Farm Bill. We kind of got together and looked at what would be most impactful, what's most feasible, what would be the best way for the federal government to provide their support. So that's kind of how we aligned on our top 4 recommendations for this farm bill, but the other ones on this slide are our other top recommendations. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of them. On prevention, our top recommendation is to standardize and clarify food date labels. So in our country, we have a ton of different food date labels. Sometimes they're commonly referred to as expiration dates, but they don't really mean when food expires. That can of beans that's in your cupboard isn't going to say, oh, it's July 20th, I'm bad now. It's still good and safe to eat for some time after some of those dates. And oftentimes those dates are the manufacturer's best guess at when the food is at peak quality or like crunch or color and things. So oftentimes food is safe to eat afterwards. And this confusion around date labels is one of the top causes of consumer food waste or food waste in our homes. So our goal here is to standardize date labels and get at the federal level. So make sure that there's not a hodgepodge of different ones across all of the country, and really make sure that there's just one label that indicates food safety for things that need it, like baby formula or infant formula. And then one date label that indicates quality so that people know, okay, it might not be at its most crunchy, but it is still safe to eat. And we have a marker bill that's been introduced bipartisanly in the House and in the Senate called the Food Date Labeling Act, which would do this and also encourage USDA to provide education around this, because it is confusing and we need to pair it with some outreach and education too. So that's one of the top ones, and one of the actions I think you should hopefully have seen. And I'll just read the other 2, but I know I want to make sure there's enough time for Regina to talk and then Q&A, so I'll move along. Some of the things around surplus food rescue that we encourage is expanding tax incentives, such as making a farmer tax credit that's easier for them to access than the existing tax incentives that work fine for businesses. But we've heard that, for example, some farmers and food growers find it cumbersome. And so I think there's ways to improve that too. On the recycling front, we have another marker bill called the Compost Act, which would provide a grant program for composting infrastructure. And then there's also the Zero Food Waste Act, which would provide planning and implementation grants for states to enact proven policies that reduce food waste, like organic waste bans. And then lastly, on coordination, we see a role for the federal government to play in better research on food loss and waste, and more data. I think kind of like I mentioned at the top of the call when I was talking about what sectors waste the most, we have a general idea, but we still could benefit from more and better data in the field. And then our last suggestion on coordination is to create an office of food loss and waste at USDA. Right now, there's one person whose job it is to do research and coordination and all of this, and it's definitely more than a one-person job. So we'd love to see that expanded. And I believe this is my last slide that I just wanted to share and leave you all with, which is from the Eat Lancet Commission report that came out a couple years ago around sustainable food systems. And the quotation is, "Food is the single strongest lever to optimize human health and environmental sustainability on Earth." So I think just to share that this is such an important intersection to be working on, and appreciate all of your time tonight. And now I will pass it to Regina Anderson, the CEO of the Food Recovery Network, and also members of Your Food Waste Coalition. So excited to share the stage with her and look forward to hearing more about their work.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nina, for being just so incredible. It's so nice to work alongside you. And Marianne, thank you so much. Matthew and Brett, this has been wonderful. And to everyone listening in, hello from all across all the different pockets around the US and beyond. My name's Regina, as Nina mentioned, and as Marianne mentioned. It's a delight to be here with everyone. I'm here in the Alexandria, Virginia area, and I always want to start my conversations with, land recognition. I am on the land of Piscataway Conoy tribal land. The Piscataway Conoy are a modern day tribe, meaning they are still here with us today, still protecting and being stewards of our land, our air, our water. And I personally pay rent to the Piscataway Conoy tribe as a material offering for their amazing stewardship. So wanted to say that. The next thing is that I wanted to say is power to the people. Check out all of these amazing actions that all of you have taken. It is so exciting to see this direct action in progress in live time. So thank you everyone who, you are just doing so much. And as Brett said, when people see this information coming in, all the emails coming in, they do take note. We know that for a fact. So thank you everyone. It's amazing. The next thing I'm going to try to do is share my screen. That's probably the harder part for me. Let's see. Oops. Let me just do 1 second. There we go. Okay. So I'm gonna fly through all of this so quickly because first, I hope to be in touch with all of you who are listening in today, taking direct action. We know that as Brett mentioned, today is the day that we're coming together in community to do this work. And, tomorrow there's more work to be done. The day after there's more work to be done. So please be in touch. This is one of several invitations that I will, send out to everyone. And I really do mean that. I also wanted to give a shout out to some of the young folks listening in, taking direct action. Some that I had an opportunity to meet today through the Congressional Hunger Center. A bunch of us went over to the Hill to advocate for some of the changes that we need to see. Many of them outlined in the Farm Bill, outlined so wonderfully by Nina. So thank you all so much for being the voice that says enough is enough, we can do better, and we can do that together. At Food Recovery Network, we believe no one should be hungry. And as was mentioned, we have more than enough food here in the United States to ensure that everyone who is suffering from food insecurity has the food that they deserve. So Nina had mentioned, when outlining the scope of the issue, that at the individual home, that's the majority of where food is wasted. Perfectly good food is wasted. At Food Recovery Network, and I'll get into more of how we do our work in just a second, we actually work directly in all of those other sections beyond the individual home. So we work farm all the way through food service. That's where we do our food recovery. And we know, as Nina mentioned, every zip code in the United States has food insecurity, every single one. And the data that Food Recovery Network has been collecting and the mapping work that we're doing, we know that there's about 3,400 counties in the United States, and only about 300 of them or so have on average a living wage for the folks living in those particular counties. Everywhere else, that is not the case. So the federal government sets the poverty rate at, I think it's $26,000 for a family of 4. But the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, sets the living wage at around $100,000 to fully see our needs being met with transportation, with food, with education, with housing. So you can see there's a really big disparity. And currently right now, 34 million people are suffering unnecessarily from food insecurity. And we can change that. And as was mentioned earlier in my introduction, thank you so much, Marianne, the majority of those folks who are consistently suffering from food insecurity are communities of color. Now, again, every single zip code has food insecurity, sadly, but the communities that have the resources to navigate through a variety of different things that are impacting their communities, the ones that continue to suffer, continue to lose resources, these are communities of color. So at Food Recovery Network, we started in 2011. We were started by college students at the University of Maryland who said enough is enough. They saw a lot of food being thrown away on their college campus, while at the same time they were volunteering out in their communities, and they saw people who needed food. So they thought, why are we throwing away all this perfectly good food? At 4:58 p.m., that food was fine to eat, but for some reason at 5:01 p.m., that food was being thrown away. So they devised Food Recovery Network, worked with their dining manager to create a recovery program. And I will say, when they first created this idea and wanted to talk with their dining provider, the answer was absolutely not. The answer was no. She refused to meet with the students for a very long time, but they would not give up. They kept asking for a meeting, and then finally the dining manager said, okay, heard them out, thought the idea was really great. And as they say, the rest is history. But I just wanted to highlight that to really think about the tenacity and the resiliency of young people who know that the status quo was not working, and they would not stop until they were heard. And I'm just so inspired by that. And that's really why I love working at Food Recovery Network, because of the thousands of people all across the United States who are saying enough is enough, and we can do a lot better. To date, we have chapters in about 200 different higher ed institutions all across the United States. We're in 46 states. We're the largest student-led movement. We're fighting food waste and would-be food waste and hunger in the United States. I've been there since 2015. I've seen a lot of things change over the years. I've met so many incredible students, continue to meet a lot of incredible students, including today at our Hill visit. Historically, when we are on college campuses, we train all of our students on how to handle the food safely. And you'll see some of the students in this picture recovering food. So they have the hairnets, the gloves, but really importantly, they are working alongside the dining staff, the unsung heroes who spend their whole shifts making food, that instead of now being tasked to throw that food away, all of their hard work, that anything that wasn't purchased at the end of the night, they are now working with our students to recover that food. And then that food is brought to a nonprofit partner agency. So we call the folks that receive the food. So in the local community, so these are homeless shelters, soup kitchens, churches, after-school programs, domestic violence shelters, organizations that work with veterans, people who are unhoused, people who are unemployed or underemployed, women and their families, all kinds of nonprofits that in their own ways also provide meals to the community. And it's been really amazing thus far. So to date, as I said, since 2011, through the power of college students and our stakeholders, we've recovered over 12 million pounds of food. And this is mostly one carload of food at a time. We do large scale events too, and I'll get into that in just a second. But this is mostly, people after an event packaging up the food and driving it, or taking e-bikes or walking that food literally down the street or a couple neighborhoods over. We work with over 330 nonprofits that receive the food. And we also work with businesses, as I mentioned, who also want to do the right thing with their surplus food. And I gotta say, it's real quick that this work, it's actually, it's not hard. It's not rocket science. People know how to handle food safely. They know we could do a landscape analysis of where that food can go. It's all about relationships. And it's all about, if you really think about it, we are looking at the food system and we're looking at systems of power, and we are reconstructing what doesn't work for us. And we are putting in place new structures and new components that help all of us thrive. So we're really excited to get on to more higher ed institutions. And thank you again, Marianne, for that. You know, if any of you are associated with a higher ed institution, please let us know. We'd love to have you be part of the movement. But also, you know, wanted to think about the fact that right now, when Nina was talking about, you know, what happens when we don't waste food, you know, I really want to infuse into that. When we don't waste food, we add that dignity and respect back to our farmers who are closest to making all of this happen for all of us. We're all eating because of a farmer, even if it's, you know, growing food in our own backyard, and we are our own Farmer Joe. It is the farmers who are oftentimes also on the margins themselves, and the farm hands who are also on the margins themselves. We wanted to quickly just give a bigger picture of what Food Recovery Network is tackling right now. We believe when we do our work, our unique contribution is to recover surplus food to feed everyone who's hungry in the US. But you'll see here in our different strategies, powerful partnerships are a way that we can do that. So conversations like this tonight, working with NRDC, working with Climate Action Now, and working with Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic, working with ReFed, all the names, you know, that Nina has said, that's how we get things done. So I wanted to give this really quickly to everyone. We're feeding people today. We're working on advocacy so that we can feed everyone forever. We can end hunger forever. And honestly, you should be saying that to people. We can end hunger right now. And I remember I told my dentist this once, and you know, he asked what I did. I told him, and I was like, yeah, you know, I want to eradicate hunger. And he chuckled as if, you know, oh yeah, right, that's not going to happen. And I was like, yeah, no, that's what we're going to do. And so when we know that we can do this, and conversations again tonight, that's how we can make this happen. We no longer have to assume that hunger or food insecurity is just a byproduct of like how our society is structured. It's not. Wanted to give a few more pictures to our incredible college students. In the middle is one of our students, Nadia, who I just had a chance to meet today at Georgetown. And Nadia went to go visit one of her representatives outside of Tampa. So just really incredible young people, really changing the world and changing how we think about food in the United States, again, along with many, many other amazing partners. You're just always trying to put the voice to the students whenever I can. So here's a quote. And yeah, you know, as someone asked, we'll definitely, my slides are always available. I personally want to invite everyone. Here's another invitation. In late August, early September, Food Recovery Network will have one of our 2 annual public conversations where we'll talk about our work and how we are tracking towards that work. So you can get to know us a bit more, but also how we plan to recover surplus food to feed everyone who's hungry in the United States. So, you know, here, again, the production side all the way down to, you know, the commercial setting where we work, wherever there's food, we are here, including food businesses, folks outside of higher education. We can help support if you have an event, you know, farmers, wherever the food might be. You know, we help with the logistics. We help people understand what they can do instead of throwing the food away, where it can go, how long they have to keep the food, any questions. And what I mean by that is any barriers, any reasons why people don't want to recover food. We have all the resources available to make sure that they will recover food. So again, I wanted to go through this very quickly, but if you have questions, if you're interested in, yeah, our corporate dining, what do they do with their surplus food? Ask them, you know, put them in touch with me. I would love to talk with them. We, again, large scale events. This happens to be a celebrity chef event, or right before the Super Bowl. We were in Glendale, Arizona, a really wonderful community that also has a high rate of food insecurity. Bobby Flay hosted the celebrity event, so that's my crew. Who they got to meet Bobby. I did not get to meet Bobby, but that's okay. And this event was hosted by Guy Fieri. We recovered almost 3,000 pounds of food. We've done events where we've recovered 33,000 pounds of food. We helped in New York with an event that recovered 96,000 pounds of food, that had we not been there, that precious food would have literally gone into landfill. That is, as Nina outlined, that is where most food goes. It is not recovered yet. It is not composted. It's not fed to animals. As much as my sleeping dog on the couch would like that to be fed to animals, that's not necessarily the case. But we can change that. We will change that. Celebration, the Food Donation Improvement Act, as Nina touched on, helped to make clearer the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan law, that no matter who is president right now, the US federal government wants us to recover food. And so we should take them up on that. And at this point, just because we don't know where to begin, there's so many resources. Really, truly, we have to get uncomfortable and help other people be uncomfortable with the fact that they are throwing food away, food that people could eat. As philosopher Biggie Small says, if you don't know, now you know. And what are we going to do after that? You have plenty of people that can help you out. And so I know, again, we're in shared community. All of you are here for a reason. You are doing the work. And another invitation that I have for all of you is, where are your friends that did not come tonight? What are they up to? How are we going to encourage them? We cannot, after today, we have to keep talking about this. We have to get uncomfortable, and we have to, just normalize talking about what we know is, again, basically an existential crisis facing the global world, but also here in the United States, literally solvable. So thank you, everyone. And I really look forward to talking with you all, as I mentioned, but also looking forward to hearing any questions that you might have. And I'm going to turn things back over to Marianne. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Regina, for inspiring us. Very inspiring talk. Really appreciate it. I have a question. We don't have much time for questions, since Brett's going to close us out with a few announcements. But my impression is that you work mostly with the campus, with the university campus higher education organizations, but isn't there another network that deals with the community organizations? Like in Ithaca, we have the Friendship Donations Network that gets food from campus and then distributes it to other groups that need it, and they get food from Wegmans, from our grocery store, et cetera. So is there, so a lot of people here who might be on the call interested in getting involved locally, but they might not be connected with a campus. Is there a way to find out your local group that's doing this kind of work?
Yes, absolutely. That is such a great point, Marianne. And the thing is, local is the way to go, because the less our precious food has to travel, the better, the more resilient our communities can be. So usually, most places, a good place to start, even if you are not religious affiliated, churches are usually good places that will let you know where food is needed. There's usually food banks in close vicinities. It's a really great place to start, and then you can always get in touch with us. As I mentioned, we work with over 330 nonprofits, so wherever your community is, Food Recovery Network can also help pinpoint you to local nonprofits or efforts to recover food and bring it to a variety of different places in your community.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And a quick question, are there chapters at community colleges as well as at universities?
We love our community college chapters, yes, and we want to see that increase. Sometimes it's really interesting, not all community colleges have dining services because students are commuters, and so the community college, though, the hub that it represents for a community is still so important. So while the food might not be coming, from their dining hall, like at a four-year institution, it is still a wonderful place to be, a pickup location. And we're actually doing a lot of work to increase that in a variety of ways. So either dining from a community college or, food is available at community colleges. They are so central in how FRN does our work.
Great. Thank you, Regina. And we are going to close out in about 1 minute, but I wanted to ask Nina a question, and that is on the food date labeling. Are there any efforts to standardize, or are we waiting for that to be in the Farm Bill or some other bill before we're going to have any efforts to do the standardizing of the food date labels?
Yes, yeah, there are existing efforts. Like I mentioned, the bill that's been introduced, and our goal and the coalition's goal is to get that passed through the Farm Bill. I think there are pathways if it doesn't end up in the Farm Bill as well. And there also have been efforts to do this at the state level. This year, California had a exactly similar bill to the Food Date Labeling Act, but what we heard from manufacturers was that they actually would prefer this on the federal level because state by state patchwork is still going to continue the problem. But yes, our goal is to include it in the Farm Bill.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nina and Regina. That was great. We really learned a lot and got inspired, and Robin's clapping. I can see Robin. But I'm going to turn it over to Matt and Brett. Looks like we're kind of almost to 2000. I don't know if we can make it there before we close out.
I think we can. I think we just have to decide we're going to do it, and then I think we're going to do it.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Matthew and Brett.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nina and Regina and everybody, for joining us tonight to take these actions, which, as you heard, really, really do matter. And I now know 1,000 times more now than I knew about food waste, and I hope that's true for all of you. A couple of final announcements before we close it out. You will find probably next week a new feature in the app, which will let all of us contact directly our state's attorneys general and a couple other state officials beyond your state assembly person and senator and governor, which you have been able to do. So very excited. We're going to put this new feature to use with a campaign that we're calling Make 'em Pay. So we're going to be advocating, asking states attorney generals to initiate lawsuits against the fossil fuel industry to recover some funding, for all the loss and damages that their actions and inactions have created. Fossil fuel industry has gotten off scot-free to date, been totally unaccountable and received lots of subsidy. We think the time for that to end is now. So we'll be tackling that. We have a couple more action parties, nothing definitely nailed down. Well, actually, a couple that are definite, but we don't have the Eventbrite set up for them yet. One, we will be in October 10th. We will have the very eminent, distinguished climate scientist, Dr. Michael Mann, join us in a conversation about what the science tells us and what we all can do. I don't know if you've ever heard Dr. Mann talk. It really is a treat. I hope you can join us. And then Marianne has been in communication with Senator Merkley of Oregon office. He introduced legislation to help protect the monarch butterfly. And we're having a discussion with them to have Senator Merkley, join us to help him. We'd like to help him, improve prospects for the monarch butterfly and other invertebrates, which are greatly threatened at this point. Also, for those of you who represent other organizations, I just wanted to repeat that this action party that we do, with actions in the app and with the goal tracker and with the action parties, Matthew and I are available to help other organizations produce their own action parties. And we've already done that with a couple other organizations, Beyond Plastics, Physicians for Social Responsibility. So if any of you belong to organizations that you think might be interested in having their own action parties, please reach out to me. I'm going to put you can reach me through the email support@climateactionnow.com. And if we have the bandwidth, we'd be very happy to help other organizations. And I want to repeat our offer to everyone, please, if you have any interest in scaling up your impact, a great way to do that is by helping us create actions for the Climate Action Now app. And those actions will get used hundreds or thousands of times. It's an amazing way for all of you to have a very easy way for all of you to really scale up your impact. And I think that's all I have for now. And it's so great to see you. This is the thing that just keeps me going. When I see, Nina and Regina and all of you taking action, that is the antidote to despair. This is, and there's so many others in the world like us out there that are doing this. So many bright, talented people are just working so hard. And that I think has to give us hope. That is what it's going to take. So thank you everybody for showing up, and stay tuned on the newsletter and we'll let you know what's coming soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brett. Matthew, are you staying after to offer